Okay, so this is the third lecture in Jung's vision seminars. This one was given in 1930. So last time we ended talking about a dream in which the patient arrived at the convergence of four valleys on a boat with a male guide. There were, we could add also at this location, a number of sheep, one of which is found by the man and the other is found by the patient herself. The sheep that the man finds is sick and lame and can't walk, while the sheep that the patient finds is pregnant. So both patient and guide are concerned both could die. So Jung first considers whether these sheep may be related to Christian symbolism, since the patient comes from a Protestant Christian upbringing, and Christ is, of course, the Savior represented by a lamb who is slain. However, he suggests that the sheep appear because the patient's inherited Christian attitude is, quote, responsible for the standstill in which she finds herself. So we might think, because of this, and due to a prior suggestion that it's the patient's overdeveloped intellect, which was the cause of her breakdown, that it's a certain Protestant intellectualism that's to blame. But Jung goes on to say that it's something deeper, that the religious attitude of the unconscious and not any conscious or formal doctrine or dogma is at issue. So he calls this unconscious attitude the patient's more primitive or more deeply located Christian disposition. This, he suggests, might even be considered Catholic, insofar as the recesses of the unconscious attitudes at the same time represent vestiges of even older inherited belief systems. So the deeper you go back in the unconscious, he thinks the deeper in time you also go back. So I think we can point out two things that are kind of counterintuitive that Jung has done here. On the one hand, he finds Christian symbolism in the dream, and rather than associating it with kind of the Christian associations, he says that because of certain anomalies in the representation of the symbol is actually saying something about the deficit of the symbol. And the second thing he's doing is, rather than attributing kind of the patient's predicament to the more obvious outer possibilities, that is kind of the formal intellectualism of Protestantism, he's pulling the problem even deeper into the patient's unconscious by suggesting that the intellectualism is something deeper and more historic. So Jung goes on to suggest that the guide with whom the patient is on the boat and who finds the lame sheep is similarly a symbol of the Good Shepherd in Christian symbolism, but that also, and here again he's pulling it deeper into the pagan unconscious, a symbol that connects with a deeper recess of her religious ancestry, with a more pagan spiritual leader, a leader who will foresee the psychological experiences she herself will undergo, which may or may not be Christian. So because the unconscious is connected with the relationship to the instinct, he further suggests that the sickness and pregnancy of the sheep, both of whom are at risk of dying, represent the deviation of the patient's unconscious process from her Christian inheritance, expressing the insufficiency of that old Catholic way of relating to the instincts. So this he will develop further in later lectures, but to summarize the symbolism in this dream, he says, quote, "In this dream, our patient is one of the sheep, insofar as she is an instinctual member of the Christian church. Her mind is lame and she is pregnant with the future." Okay, so two dreams conclude the third lecture, one in which the patient is driving home, fearing she will run out of gas and that she's on the wrong road, when she hears a man say to her, "You should have known this was the way." And in the second dream, the patient is on a boat at sea in a great storm, and a little boy is sick in the cabin. The dreamer is watching the storm outside through a window, and the patient thinks to herself, "This is the first time I've been in a storm without getting sick." So read together, Jung suggests that the road home is the patient's road to self-understanding, and that the storm is the chaos of finding one's own route to that goal. Here he thinks the patient has made progress. So the storm doesn't make her sick, because for the first time she realizes the storm is inside her. She's beginning to withdraw the projection that the chaos of life and individuation always comes from outside. Here she begins to take responsibility for her own chaos, and she's not demoralized and she's not seasick, because she realizes her condition is an inner one. So in the final part of the dream, she's passing a mental hospital, and this Jung thinks is the cause of her concerns and the storm, and ultimately the projection which she's withdrawn. She no longer looks outside to validate that she's on the right path, and the asylum has no authority over her.